Welcome
This is an awesome podcast. This is one of my favorite ones.
to the Jeff
That's a lot of whiskey, Jeff.
Macolino
Jeff Macolino.
podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me today. Got a fun one today. Another thoughtful one, I would say, with Ashlyn Lelej. So, hey, I'm just going to say sit back, relax, and enjoy, because I don't think I have anything else to particularly push. Watch the movies. You know where to find them. All right, everybody. I'm very pleased to welcome Ashlyn Lelej to the Jeff Macolino podcast. How are you this night? Not evening, it's night.
Right. Yes, I'm good. It is past my bedtime, but I'm still good. I'm still awake.
Yeah, I was surprised. I saw you were on the East Coast. A lot of times I have this 10 o'clock Monday night slot open, and
Right.
it gets used sometimes. I always think it's going to be a West Coast person.
Right. Yeah.
Believe it or not,
honestly,
New York, Raleigh, and you're in Charlotte, I think,
yes.
are the last three. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I did think that it was 10 a.m. And then when I checked, I was like, oh, it's p.m. But that worked. It worked out fine. So.
all right,
yeah.
What weirdo in Florida is starting a recording at 10 p.m.? Especially if you do a Google search of me, it's pretty clear that I drink a lot. But this Monday night window only works for me because I host trivia, and I don't get home until 9:30, so I'm sober.
Right.
So it's like, and my thought really when I put this time out there was always like, I'll get some West Coast people who otherwise, want to do it. I don't like doing it that late because you have to stay sober.
Right.
But no, just works out beautifully this way.
Yeah. It worked out today, so that's good.
Good. So let's. Why don't you tell my audience? And I've listened to you on a podcast, so I kind of know this part, but you'll say it much better than I will. What you do currently for a living, and let's just go with that.
Yes. So I am a speech language pathologist, which is basically the same term as a speech therapist. And so I work with children and adults, all ages, on everything speech and language. I have my own private practice that does speech therapy and occupational therapy. Occupational therapists work a lot with the same clients that speech therapists work with. So it's a good marriage of the two therapies.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I work in a private practice, and where we do both telehealth and in the clinic. I prefer in person, of course, but telehealth is perfect if you need something that you can't come into the clinic. That telehealth has gotten much better over the past 5 or 6 years after COVID. So most therapists are very well equipped to do telehealth now. And it works much better. So yes. That's kind of the short answer.
Yeah. So how did you get, and again, I know the answer to this, unless you change your answer, but how did you get into this line of work? How did you discover this field?
Yes. So I always joke that I was just undecided, and I knew I wanted to do something with people one-on-one, but I didn't quite know exactly what it was. So my kind of story is that my best friend, who's still actually my best friend 30 years later, she mentioned, maybe you should go to this class. It sounds like something you would like to do. And I went and I just loved it. So it's kind of been since that class, literally the next week, I declared my major, and that's kind of how I chose it. I did go to speech therapy when I was a kid, but it wasn't for anything that in depth. It was just for an R sound, which we see lots of kiddos. Yes.
That's me too.
R sound. Right. Right.
Well, that's one thing that the thing I probably get complimented more than anything else about is my voice. And I'm like,
very nice voice.
Speech therapy. Imagine how bad I would sound, no matter how deep my voice is, if I couldn't say my R's.
Right, exactly. That's the thing. And they used to work on it. I mean, they still do work on articulation in schools, um, but it's based on academic relevance. So now, when I was a kid, they actually worked on articulation. It didn't matter if you still made decent grades. But now, if you're in a lot of cases, depends on caseload, but if you have good grades, they won't put you in speech therapy because they're
Oh
saying that the
God.
speech doesn't affect it. So we have so many kids that are 10, 11, 15 years old that aren't saying their R's correct, or they'll have like the craziest lisp. It looks like their little tongue is a snake coming out of their mouth. That's totally fixable, but school won't fix it anymore. So parents don't think it's an issue, but they do not grow out of it. So you've got
Well,
lots of
that's
people.
horrible because I,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
I was
Right.
a 99th percentile performer on testing and
Right.
everything. So
Mhm,
I would have
mhm.
been, but
Yeah, it has
but
nothing to do with academics usually. Yeah.
no, which is insane because I remember sitting and hearing my teachers talk to my parents as to
Mhm,
why, and I went to a Catholic school, so I had to be taken
mhm.
out of, 1 or 2 mornings a week. I showed up late to
Right.
school because I had to go to a public
Mhm.
school to
Because
get
they
speech
right.
therapy.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
remember them saying he's so intelligent, but we need
Right.
to like he and it
Yeah.
caused a confidence issue with me. I didn't want to
Right.
answer a question if there was an R in it.
Right. Exactly.
Conchi,
So
I
I mean it can
knew how I
yeah.
sounded.
Yeah. It can be like second the academics can fail secondary to it. So it's not that it's causing a problem in academics, but if you do have low confidence, which your voice is basically that's a huge like personal identifier. So if you sound like if you don't sound typical, as much as we would love to accept everybody who doesn't sound typical, it's still going to be perceived a certain way. So I definitely advocate for get the just because the school system says that your child doesn't need it, it will not come after 7 or 8 years old, no matter how brilliant your child is or
Yeah.
how smart the parent is, because a lot
Well,
of times parents think they can fix it. They cannot.
no.
So
Well,
yeah. So
it was. It's funny that my daughter, and she is on the
uh-huh.
spectrum.
Mhm.
When she was probably 5, I want to say, 4, like early
Uh-huh.
on, I
Yeah.
remember, and you might appreciate this because this is one of my prouder
Mhm.
parenting moments where they're like,
Yeah.
she needs, she needed occupational therapy, which she did.
Mhm.
They're like, she
Mhm.
needs speech therapy, and I'm like, no, she doesn't. They're like, well, she can't say some things. She just says it wrong.
Right.
And I'm like, Bella, say Chuck E. Cheese. And she said, Lucky Cheese. And they're like, see, she can't say the CH sound. I'm like, did you
Right.
hear her say cheese? She can say
Right.
the CH sound. She's not hearing it right.
Right.
Sure enough,
Right.
she had to get tubes in her ears and I think another
Right.
surgery a couple
Yeah.
years later because she couldn't
Right.
hear.
She
So,
couldn't hear
because
it.
I'm
Right.
like, but I couldn't say R's. I couldn't selectively say R's. They were W's.
Right.
I couldn't say
Right. Right.
Lucky Cheese
Mhm.
means she got the CH sound. We heard it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Exactly. See, you should have been a speech therapist.
well, I was able to. That was one thing. My mom she's like the fascinating thing. Like I did speech therapy faster
Mhm.
than they expected me to do it because I would go home and
Mhm.
practice. I
Right. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
wanted to
It
talk
makes
right.
a huge difference
My
because
younger
it's muscle
sister,
memory. So.
it is, and my younger sister went to speech therapy, didn't care. She still doesn't say her R's right.
Right.
She didn't care. She's a fully
Right.
grown adult. She
Yeah.
never cared.
Uh-huh.
She never worked on it.
Right. Right.
Um, the other thing my mom points out is I had to go to the orthodontist and they gave me headgear to wear at night to fix my overbite.
Yes. Hmm.
And I wore it and I couldn't sleep. It was the most uncomfortable, horrible
Right.
thing. So I figured
Hmm.
out the position that it put my jaw in and conscientiously focused on keeping my jaw in that
Uh-huh.
position for as long
Yeah.
as I could throughout the day.
Hmm.
And the overbite
Hmm.
went away. No,
Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
wore the headgear.
Right. Yeah.
She's like, you can,
It makes sense though, because it is muscle memory. So if you do know where to put it and you're accurate on that, I could see how I'm not an orthodontist, so I can't say that, but it does work similarly in certain speech therapy things too.
yeah,
Yeah.
my thought was with that, and I was like in third grade.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
tells you how
You just,
my
well,
brain works.
necessity is the mother of invention. The third grader did not want to wear that massive thing every night. So,
No,
so
no.
yeah,
Well, I figured I'm
you
like I wear it
intimidated.
8 hours a night. I'm awake
Yeah.
16 hours. As long as I do this
Hmm.
at least 8 hours during the day, I'm
Yeah.
fine.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not saying you can fix every orthodont
Right. Right.
problem that
Yeah.
way. You can't straighten your teeth by just thinking about it, but
Right. Right. Exactly. But in certain cases, that had to do with positioning, and your body was actually able to do it structure wise. Like, because you can't think structure, you got to be able to structurally do it. But
Mhm.
if you were able to do it, I mean, that's muscle memory. It makes sense, especially if you muscle memory is just literally wearing ruts in your brain over time of like, this is homeostasis, where your jaw is going to stay. I could see it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
interesting thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was unusual in my, I don't know what to call it, whether it was motivation or what, but I worked like hell
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, so besides speech therapy, which you
Yes.
mentioned, there's the when
Mhm.
I think when most people hear it, they think of that, the kid who has the lisp,
Right.
the kid
Mhm.
who
Mhm.
who
Yes.
can't, can't
Mhm.
pronounce the R's.
Yeah.
Um, there's also the autism side of things.
Yes. Mhm.
And I do want to talk about too, because I never really put this together, the adult like stroke recovery side of it,
Yes.
which never really
Right.
went through my head. Also,
Yeah.
when I was
Mhm.
just a weird side note, so and I may ask you some weird questions just because of this. When I was listening
Right.
to you on the other podcast,
Uh-huh.
another podcast, not the other podcast, um,
Right.
the only other podcast out there, you the way you were talking about being undecided and that's
Right.
I was
Mhm.
reminded had a good conversation with my daughter who just started her junior year of high school, and she has no idea what she wants to do.
Yeah, which is
But
fine.
yeah,
It's harder these days too, I think, to not be decided younger and younger and younger. Just the
it's
pressure
yeah.
of it. I think it is a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, they really try to lock you in
Mhm.
starting in high
Mhm.
school, and that
Right.
I don't really like. But
Right.
she went away for a month this summer at a good counsel camp, like a sleepaway camp.
Uh-huh.
And for 2 weeks, she had a bunch of, I think, 10-year-olds that she was in charge of. And
Oh,
she said, I used to say I wanted to be a teacher but I don't want to be a teacher. Like it
right.
doesn't pay
Mhm.
anything. And I'm like, well, you
Mhm.
marry a rich husband, you could be a teacher. But otherwise, I mean, and I'm
Yeah.
like, you can make
It's a
it work.
struggle.
You
Yeah.
can make it
Yeah.
work. But yeah, it's not, if you're going to be on your own, it's probably not the best career
Yeah.
path.
Mhm.
So when I heard you talk, I'm like, she wants to work with kids. Maybe she could just do this
Mhm.
and she has, un, I don't want to say unfortunately, but she has
Yeah.
experience with it.
Right. Yeah.
And she, I never know the proper way to say this, so I'm probably going to say this in a way that's offensive or
This
whatever.
is the cone of safety.
Well, she is, I mentioned she's on the spectrum. When she was
Yes.
4 to 8 years old, it was very, very obvious. Now,
Mhm.
no,
Mhm.
no one, I mean, there might be something weird she does where you might be like, huh, that's
Mhm.
weird.
Mhm. Right.
Nobody would know otherwise. So
Right.
she's, again, I know you're not supposed to say the low end of the spectrum or whatever, but, and I think
Right.
part of that, though, is she had in elementary school, she had like a social skills class,
Mhm.
that
Right.
kind of thing. So I think a
Mhm.
lot of it was things that
Mhm.
she has gotten
Right.
treatment for.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think I'm going to give that credit for a lot of why she's a very, I mean, she has another job. She just got it at Wawa. I'm super impressed. She doesn't want to drive, so she doesn't have her license yet. Um,
That's a thing now too. A lot of high
a
school
lot of
kids
kids don't.
think, yeah,
Yeah.
which is shocking because my generation, like you were dying to get the license, but that's a thing now
But
too. So,
she is able to navigate the public buses, and they're clean and safe
right.
now because
Hmm.
her student ID, you're allowed to drive
Hmm.
ride free on the buses. She's able to
Yeah.
get all around town and navigate the bus paths. I'm like, I've lived here my whole life. I couldn't get on a
Right.
bus from here to there. I wouldn't.
Right.
It would. I feel I don't know where to start. I'm sure it's
Right.
not that
Exactly.
hard, but
Right.
she even said she's like, because none of her friends drive. She's like, we only hang out when I was gone for a month. Nobody hung out because no one could figure out the bus routes.
Right.
I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I like that she's resourceful and
Yeah.
she's she's got to work on her communication,
Yeah.
you know.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I think I give that more towards the way kids are being taught and the way society is this day and age, as
Yeah.
opposed to
Yeah. I think it's definitely a little bit of a perfect storm. And then you throw in anywhere on the autism spectrum, one of the issues is usually a little bit of that use of social language, even if
hmm
it's very, um, one of the terms that you hear people use is high functioning. That can be offensive as well, just because it is implying that, hey, there's the opposite. There's very low functioning, so I don't, there's terms that get used and then thrown out, used and thrown out. But a lot of times, as they get older, and part of it is is kind of the perfect storm. So if they do have therapies that help them through these things, um, some kids will go, but who get diagnosed early with autism, wherever they are on that spectrum, they just consistently have speech and OT and that sort of thing until they kind of, just throughout their life. Um, and sometimes it can remain helpful the whole time too. Um, and then other kids will go for a period of time and then kind of get discharged. And then sometimes even as teenagers or as adults, they'll come back for like almost like a little bit of like extra, like a maintenance
hmm
thing, if that makes sense. Or if you're navigating something completely new, like you're going away to college, sometimes, it helps to get involved in like a peer group, a social language group, that sort of thing. But yeah, so I think all of it's helpful. And then I do agree with you on the just the huge increase of screens and Gen Z kids,
hmm
and even Alpha too. Alpha is actually less so than Gen Z was. I feel like the Gen Z was kind of no regulations, no holds barred, and then they threw it into school, so then you couldn't even regulate that as a parent, you know. So
Yeah.
now they're actually in a lot of the school systems, well, I won't say a lot, but some of the school systems where, you're getting test scores that are decreasing and, children graduating from high school with such poor reading scores and that sort of thing. Now, in a lot of states, they've gone back and they've tried to say like, well, maybe we should take screens out of elementary schools now, all that stuff. So anyway, they're starting to get a little bit of that. So I attribute a little bit of it to all of it. If you have a diagnosis like autism, communication and social language is typically a factor in that. Um, doesn't mean they can't communicate at all. It means that there's just sometimes they're going to need a little bit of extra different specialized help to get that out versus someone who just has social anxiety. It's going to be a different type of therapy to get them to be able to communicate better. Someone who has expressive language, it's going to be targeting different things. But yeah, but that's great that she's going out there and like kind of navigating the bus system and all that stuff too, because that's it's, if you don't know where you're going, you have to ask. So there's social language there, all that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, it's you know the one thing it's interesting with her, and it's not
Mhm.
as bad. The one thing that I used to, and this was this was one of those things where I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know if this makes me a bad parent or a good parent, but there were times where she would do things that would be just completely and just bad, just very lack of empathy to hurt her
Mhm.
brother, to hurt her mother, to
Right.
me, whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, and I would try to talk to her about it like a
Mhm.
calm adult, and she did
Right.
not get it.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
one time I exploded,
Mhm.
screamed at her, was angry.
Mhm.
She, that was the first time she cried and she started apologizing. Like seriously
Right.
felt bad. Like she actually
Mhm.
under she could see how much it hurt
Right.
me.
The emotion at right. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and this is when she was younger. I don't have to do this now.
Right.
or I haven't done it now, but maybe
Right.
maybe sometimes I should. But I'm like, I remember doing this once when she did something that hurt. I forget if it was one of her cousins or my son, but and you could tell she didn't care. Like she didn't
Right.
understand.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I
Right.
started screaming at her, and this was in front
Mhm.
of people. And
Mhm.
she felt terror. You could see she all of a sudden
Yeah.
understood. And I'm like, and my
Mhm.
mother said something like that was too much. And I'm like,
Right.
it was what I had. Yes, it
Yeah.
was, but it's what I had to do to
Right.
make her understand she is hurting other people. She
Right.
doesn't get it. She
Yeah.
doesn't get
Mhm.
subtle
Mhm.
gestures. She doesn't get
Right.
subtle
Right. Mhm. Right.
things.
And that I think it's interesting because I mean you can see both sides of it. You can see, well, they don't have this skill naturally, so how are you gonna quote kind of punish them for it, for not getting it? But then at the same time, they do live in this world, so it's a little bit of a disservice to not be real with something.
Hmm.
I think so. Empathy is difficult for a lot of people, not just people on the autism spectrum, but empathy is one of the main differences in the brain in kids and adults with autism. It's not that they cannot learn it, but it's not innate in their brain. So I feel like it is a disservice when it's almost explained away every time.
Hmm.
Um, and there's a happy medium there. And sometimes this is tricky in therapy to um, to navigate this in therapy too. So if a similar thing happens, you're in a little group session or co-treat with a couple of kids, and one child, pushes the other one down to get the toys and does not care at all that they did this, right? So it's not that they're a terrible, horrible child and they've got to be punished for their horrible behavior. That's not it at all. But they do need to understand that's a consequence. You went into their space and kind of violated their rights. So just because you didn't intend them to hurt their feelings, or you don't quite comprehend or understand it, it doesn't change the fact that that's what happened. So there is a consequence for certain behaviors. So I think it's a good thing to teach that because especially kids with autism, they're literal. So telling them 1,000 times until they actually see it in action and see the consequence of it, they're not going to understand it. So I think, in a lot of cases, it's a good thing because that's real life. It's okay for children to see parents lose it once in a while, within boundaries, obviously. But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's a good thing because it teaches, you know what, if I do certain things, it is going to create these types of emotion in other people. And especially if people are on the spectrum, it's hard for them to naturally understand that and really feel it. So a lot of times they have to see it literally first. They have to make it literal. Oh, dad's real upset and real angry. I know when he's, yells or if there's tears in his eyes or that sort of thing, I know this is what he's feeling. I might not understand it. I might not feel why he's doing that, but I can see that he's feeling this. And they don't want to make people feel that way, So that's where and then that's literal. And then later they start to build the blocks of that. Oh, dad's was upset by that again. That must mean that I didn't think about their feelings when I did this. And then eventually A equals B, B equals C, and then you get to processing it, if that makes sense. Even if it's
Yeah.
not 100% natural, it's there. They understand it. And that enlightens them too on how to interact with other people because that doesn't make sense to them. If you're upset and angry, to them, they're looking at you like you're like a crazy monkey because they're like, why are they so upset at this? And then how are you going to navigate life that way? So it's actually, I mean, I think it's necessary to do those things in an organic way, in a natural way, that this was the natural consequence of that, if that makes sense. So it's not that you're frustrated all the time because they're not getting empathy. It's a certain situation. You're taking that opportunity to teach them in ways that they understand what that is and what that means. So I think that's a good thing here and there. It's a natural thing. So
Yeah, and I like to think it helped a little bit.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
she's still, again, it's one of those things. It's I forget who I was talking to, but they're like, I would never get one of my relatives who sees her on holidays.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're like, I
Sweet.
would never guess that she was on the spectrum. And it's
Right,
like, well, you don't live with her. There
right.
is a big difference when you
Mhm.
see someone uh
Right.
not all the time because I only have her 50% of the time, but still it's there's a
Yeah,
difference. And
yeah.
but yeah, I think like when she was younger, she had
Mhm.
more, and I remember getting this was one of the really frustrating things as a parent.
Mhm.
Some of the
Mhm.
things she did, and this is like kindergarten age, was she would
Mhm.
just randomly start humming. Like not just like she'd have no
Mhm.
idea she was doing it.
Yeah. Mhm.
And it was distracting other students and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
there was such a conflicting discussion over, well, she can't control it, so do we tell her to stop?
Mhm.
I mean, it's like I'm
Right.
like I'm not saying to punish her. You need to tell her,
Right.
Bella, you're humming. Stop.
Right.
Not in an
Right.
angry way. That was more angry than, but
Right. Right.
draw
No, I
attention.
understand.
So when
Mhm.
she starts going, tell her so she can start.
Right.
Oh, I didn't realize
Yeah.
I was doing that.
Yeah. 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 No, yeah, because there's always that balance because people with autism and various different things, but especially autism, they're going to have some atypical behaviors. That's part of their brains are wired that way. So even though you want to be accepting and understanding of, neurodiverse versus neurotypical, their brains are different. They're wired differently. So there are going to be some atypical behaviors, and then they don't have that quick social filter that is natural in neurotypical brains. So they're not going to be able to identify that as atypical behavior. And they're going to have a hard time stopping it. And they're not really going to understand why it needs to be stopped. And not everything does need to be stopped. So it's kind of this whole, you know, um, just kind of you're always navigating this with people on the spectrum, and they're always navigating it with people who are not on the spectrum. So it goes both ways. But I do agree if it is something, it's if it's something that is distracting that you do have the ability to teach them literally so that they understand and that it makes sense and that they can stop that behavior, I think that's a good thing. So I do think I agree with that, and some people would disagree in different areas, and it all has to do with how that child's functioning and what the parents want and what the environment entails and all that stuff too. But I do agree because a lot of times that sensory aspect. They're just doing it for self-stimulating behavior. All the self-stimulating behavior because their brains do. It's okay to bring that to their attention and say, oh, you're humming again. Charlie over here is having a really hard time paying attention because you're humming. Do you think you could, try to stop humming for a while? Stuff like that, where over time they'll see Charlie's getting upset and frustrated, and then they'll say, "Oh, I must be humming." So that's normal. That's not you're terrible, you're autistic, you're humming, you need to stop. That's atypical. That's literally this is affecting somebody else that is in your environment in a certain way. Let's see if we can make this work for everybody. So I think it's just how you come at it. Um, versus saying, well, they're neurodivergent. That's just let them do. That's not helping them, if that makes sense. So there's definitely a balance between the two, and it's a little bit different based on the environment and everybody involved too, which is what makes it so tricky.
Yeah, well, and it probably changes a lot. And that's
Yeah,
the
that's what's hard for them to navigate is the changing environments. Where do I act a certain way? Where are certain things acceptable? Certain things aren't. When do I choose to behave a certain way? When do I choose to let it go? That's hard for them to do, for anybody to do, but much less, somebody on the spectrum. But I still think it's worth teaching if they
y-
want to learn it. If that,
yeah, when they're able to learn it,
right.
because
When they're able to learn it. Yeah.
you want a functioning member of society. Because if you're
Right.
someone who doesn't have any empathy or filter and you
Mhm.
randomly start humming, you're not going to be able to get a job.
Right. Right. Exactly. That's, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's that, and then it's very. I like where how you approach this stuff. I think there is the weird. I'm going to make an analogy here that's throwing it into a different realm.
Uh-huh.
I remember watching a TV show, and the episode was about, I'm not going to get this right, so I'll just try to summarize it. A deaf woman did something
Mhm.
to make a surgery for her deaf child not work because she wanted her to stay
Yes.
deaf, even though she could get the
Hmm.
implant to hear.
Yeah. Hmm.
And she was born this way. This is a gift being
Hmm.
deaf. And it's like, the fuck
Right.
it is. The fuck it is. No, if you could your child can hear, but you want them to stay deaf because you're deaf and that's your thing, that's
Yeah.
selfish as shit. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
where I've heard some people like, no, we don't need to fix them. We need to help them and cater to, and it's like,
Mhm.
what world do you live in?
Right. I think it's all based on what's the goals are the same. So like when we talk about how like autism therapy has kind of changed models, it's basically the goals are the same, which is you want everybody has a right to excel, everybody
Hmm.
has a right to express themselves. And something like autism can severely hinder that in within the family system, within the society itself, within the educational system, within their social system, within their own system, being able to regulate what's that sensory feeling, how do I make this better for myself? How do I express that to somebody? All of it is the same goal. You want to be as good quality of life as possible, right?
Yeah.
So, wherever you can get, where depending on what your skills are, that sort of, and what system you live in, and all that stuff. So the goals are the same. The I think it just all a lot of it has to do with um, where I think people, the pendulum swings. So 30 years ago, it was, this is all wrong, and we need to teach them how to behave this certain way, which we still have somewhat the same goals. They're just worded differently, if that makes sense. We want these people to be functional in society. And with some wiggle room, there's a certain amount of things that you need to be able to do
Hmm.
that. So that's the goal. Some people can get there and some people can't. Um, that's, you know what I hope you know what I mean by that. I don't
Yes.
mean you're
Yeah.
not ever going to get there. We're not going to bother. I don't mean that. But and then the pendulum swung to like, oh, everybody's wired differently. Everything's great. We're not going to touch anything because that's just how their brains are. And so there's that middle ground. But I do think it's different for every person and where they're trying to function, for one thing. Where their natural ability is, how much they can learn certain skills based on their own, structures, their own brain. But I think it's all in there. You still do, it's doing a disservice to say this is how your brain is. You don't need to try to learn to do any of these other things that are expected in society, if that makes sense. But I
Hmm.
also don't think it should be where you're expected to learn the same way that a neurotypical brain is learning it, because it's not going to work. You could get it all day long and it will not work that way. You have to come at it differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the niche for therapy should be with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
No, it absolutely
yeah.
does. It does. And I think, I mean, from a school system perspective, I know they
Mhm.
try to address it. I know
Mhm.
with uh well, one thing that's interesting is we just got an email, my ex-wife and I, about the SATs, and since she used to have a 504 plan, which is
Right. Mhm.
special needs, what I don't know if that's just
Yes.
local or
Mhm.
if that's international or
No, that's federal. So
oh,
that's
okay.
federal law.
So, and I'm like, I don't think she needs any special accommodations. I mean, she hasn't had
Mhm.
any in a long time, and I'm like, I think she
Right.
just do the SAT like a normal person.
Right.
And
Mhm.
and she's like, yeah, that like we agree. And but the 504 plan I remember was so frustrating because some of the things were so rigid, and it's like,
Mhm.
no, like one of the things was when she was very young, when she had the humming issue and that kind of thing. I'm like,
Mhm.
put her in a
Mhm.
separate place to take a test. Oh, because one of her issues was she would see a kid turn in the test and she would just scribble it in and run to the front and turn
Right,
it in.
right.
She thought she
Yeah,
had to get the
she,
test in.
right, exactly.
So
And
it's
she's
like,
copying the social cues of that because she's not quite understanding all the social cues.
yeah, so she'd do
A
well
lot
for
of
the
speech
first half
kids
of
do
the
that,
test,
right?
and then all of a sudden everything's just scribble scrabble, and she'd
Right,
throw like,
right,
oh, I must need to get this test in. Um,
right. Yeah,
Oddly enough, my son had the reverse issue where he was so quick that he was causing other kids to have that behavior
right,
because he was so good at math that it would be like, I'm done.
right.
So other kids,
Yeah,
so he was like, okay, just when you finish, just nod to the teacher and then just sit there and
right.
wait until another kid turns in their test and then you can
Yeah,
turn
and
in
then go to your
yours.
right.
So he had the reverse.
Right.
Um, although my daughter, and this is one thing that I don't know if this is, I like to think she got this from me to an extent,
Uh-huh.
but she is very big on autism humor.
Oh,
She'll
good, good, good.
yeah, she'll
Yeah,
be like, "Well, I'm autistic. What do you expect?" That
right.
and she'll
Hmm.
call my son. She'll be like, "Autistic?" She'll like when he does something weird, she's like, "You're autistic." Um,
Right.
and I'm like, that's such a good. I love that, and
Hmm.
I know that's
Yeah.
somebody walking by somebody in a supermarket, and she says that it might bother them, and I get it.
I get differently, but yeah, no, I think it's a good thing. I think it's because there's that whole thing. We talk a lot about like self-advocacy, but humor comes into that. So being able to, I mean, I do it all the time where, if I get something wrong, I'm gonna poke a little joke at it because hey, it's a little funny. I mean, it is kind of silly when you get something, especially if you get something hugely wrong and you should know better and blah. I mean, it's what are you going to do but laugh at it for a minute, right? And then you change it the next time and you move on, you know, that sort of thing. So I think it's a good thing, but it's really good for people with autism because it normalizes it, so they can joke about what is so set apart for them as neurodivergent, but they can joke about it. So it normalizes it. Just like someone else, who's really short, it normalizes them being short if they make a short man joke. Like a little, I mean,
Hmm.
that's probably a little offensive there too, but you know where I'm going with this. But so
Yeah.
it's really good for them to advocate. It's like advocacy for yourself if you make little jokes like that, as long as, it's not doing it and you're like hurting your self-esteem and all that stuff. But usually I found with autism, that stuff is not what's going to hurt their self-esteem. What tends to hurt their self-esteem is if they feel like they're, living in this world that's not made for them and they're not accepted in anything. But if you're accepting yourself, then that's great for your advocacy. So, and it also puts whatever it is you're targeting in a different light. So like if it was that, like, she got angry at her brother and didn't have any empathy in that moment, and then she actually says, like, what do you expect? I'm autistic. She knows what she meant, which is a good thing. And then it breaks the ice. And then she might go back, she's more likely to go back and reassess that and be like, okay, I didn't mean to make you feel bad, you know, that sort of thing. So it's a good communication loop, which you kind of first get that in a literal way, like when you got so upset with her, she literally had to get that. And then now it's when you're making humor about it, you don't you cannot produce humor that makes sense unless you fully understand something. So that's a good thing, I think. Humor is very high level language.
Yeah, I like to think so because that's how I communicate most
Yeah, right,
most of
right,
I get people who get legitimately like I've had some people and they care about me and they've legitimately been angry at me like because I called myself dumb or an idiot.
right,
Like you're so
right,
smart. Why would you? And I'm like, I don't. It's a joke. Like
right, right,
usually
right.
what I'm using it as a code for is I'm uninformed on this topic. That
Yeah,
doesn't mean
right,
you know,
right,
knowledge and
right,
intelligence are two vastly different things.
right, right. Well, and also too, that's self-awareness. So if you're aware of why you're making a joke, I mean, that's it's helpful to you. It points to self-awareness, not low self-esteem. If that's, I think traditionally they've said like, oh, the class clowns really got low self-esteem. Like, I don't really see it that way. I mean, not that you're a class clown or that anybody tells jokes as a class clown. I don't mean that at all.
The,
But like, I, I don't see it as a way to necessarily cover up anything. I see it more as a way to almost like announce something about yourself.
no,
You
well,
know?
funny thing, when I was younger, I was incredibly shy. I had a really hard time making eye
Right.
contact with people.
Yeah.
I make the joke with my daughter, and this is probably bad parenting, but it's funny, and she has no interest in drinking whatsoever. I want to make that clear because I have alcohol all over my house.
Right.
She doesn't drink it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm like, well, alcoholism cured my autism. I'm like, when I started drinking, I started going to parties. I used to be what do they call it, a wallflower? Like
Right.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't. I started drinking. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm life of the party. I'm talking to everyone. I'm having fun, and so slowly but surely. And then it used to be I'd go to the party, and then when I got drunk, I'd start. Now
Right.
I could go completely sober, and my behavior will change a little bit, but I know how to access that
Right.
social
Right.
butterfly. When I host
Right.
trivia, I'm the life of the party. I literally run the show.
Right. Yeah.
And that I would not be able to do that the way I do
Hmm.
if I didn't get to. Well, this actually sounds like I'm talking about alcohol curing my autism.
Right.
um, which maybe is the truth. I mean, there could be something to that, but I learned to access this part that yeah, I am social. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I am comfortable talking to
Yeah. Right.
people. Even,
Right.
I know when I'm drunk, I don't have any discomfort. And when I'm sober, I do have a little bit, but I know it's in there. I know how I
Right.
behave.
Right. Yeah. That's what I mean too by that, like, of course I'm not, but that obviously alcohol lowers your inhibition. So if you're shy, you're going to have inhibition. So I'm not advocating to drink to lower those
Right,
inhibitions at
right.
all. But if you think about it, it's the same thing as like your daughter, not to keep going back to this, but as your daughter seeing how that affected you, it allowed her to access that emotion, whereas before she didn't have access to it. So that allowed her to act, alcohol allowed you, and who knows if it was alcohol or not, but let's just say for you, you feel like the alcohol let you access that. It's the same, you know, concept, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
But you don't have
it
to have
is.
alcohol to get to it. I'm not saying that. But it also, once you have experience going somewhere in your brain, it's much easier to go back there and then develop that a little bit more, you know? So it's the same thing with that's what therapy should help with too. Like that's the whole concept of therapy, speech therapy, but any kind of therapy. You set a goal. How are you going to get there? Well, you're not going to, it's at the top of the ladder. You're not going to get to the top of the ladder without climbing up every little rung to get there, you
Yeah.
know? So, different things help you get there. Different
Yeah,
people,
no, and
you know?
I've started adding the disclaimer. I never recommend anyone live their life the way I do as far as my drinking habits. I mean, like I've been
Well,
as a side
there's,
note, I've
yeah.
had AI measuring everything I put into my body.
Uh,
Because I lost a lot of weight somewhat recently, and
uh-huh.
I've been consistently the same for a while, and I want to lose
Yeah.
a little more. But
Yeah.
the alcohol, the AI is like it's like not be it's struggling to comprehend that I actually drink as much as I do.
Hmm.
And it's like and I set up like coherence tests and stuff like this so it can measure like my memory and this that the other. I have to
Uh-huh.
do math after I have a certain amount of drinks.
Yeah.
Not that it stops me because it can't, it's a
Right.
AI, but that it could be like, yeah, you clearly should have stopped drinking at this point. That's kind of the goal of it
Hmm.
on my
Yeah.
end.
Yeah. Right.
And it's like, yeah, no, you shouldn't be able to do like scientifically, you shouldn't be so I don't do what I do. But it
Yeah.
is an interesting example of I had to experience the being the social butterfly.
Right. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Even if
I
it
don't
didn't just
know.
take, you know.
Maybe it was a shortcut but again, this is
Hmm.
just for me.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because I'm sure I could have years of therapy, I could have gotten to that point, but
Hmm. Well, and you really could have gotten to it different ways. That just happens to be the way
oh
that I
yeah,
don't think you have to do it this way, but I mean, you could have gotten to it different ways. It's the the method you took was a little different, but the pathway is the same, if that makes sense. Like it's just exposing yourself little by little to feel comfortable to do so. And then it's like like a ball rolling downhill. It's going to gather more. It's going to get bigger and bigger and easier to do
Yeah.
the more
Yeah,
you
and
do it.
the other disclaimer warning I'll give people is I'm a good drunk, meaning I'm happy, I'm cheerful, I'm never angry, I don't try to start fights or
Uh-huh.
a lot of people are shitty drunks. So if you're
Yeah.
shitty drunk, it's not going to work for you to think, "Oh, I'm
Right.
going to be
Right.
more
Yeah.
comfortable and friendly with people." No, you might not have anyone who wants to talk to you again.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. You
Yeah,
know.
so there is that also.
Yeah.
Uh,
Definitely.
I uh I wanted to touch on what I mentioned earlier before we wrap up. I wanted to touch
Yeah.
on the stroke side because I know I heard you say I don't know if you said you preferred working with adults, but I know you said you loved working with
I
adults.
yeah. I like all of it because I'm just my brain. I'm a little bit neurodivergent myself, so my brain flits from one thing to another, and it feeds me that way. I enjoy it, so I really do like this field because you get so many different things that if you work enough with them, they're all connected, which is a totally different story. But so I do absolutely love working with adults after a stroke. Absolutely love it. So it's one of those things. There's certain things where in life you do and you're like this is my niche, this is what it makes perfect sense to me. So I
Yeah.
love it because it just makes sense to me, so I really do enjoy it. But yeah, so I would say I don't necessarily like working with adults more than children because I really do enjoy children and teenagers and all of it, but I really do love aphasia with adults. And aphasia is just loss of language after any kind of brain damage. So you can have
How
lots of different
I
things.
mean, it's interesting to me. You said it all kind of works, connects that kind of. To
Mhm.
me, it seems, and this is obviously just lack of understanding of how the brain works. But I'm
Mhm.
like, to me, I think of, and maybe this is the wrong example, but I think of the 7-year-old Jeffrey who can't say his own name, Jeff Wee, you know, and
Yes.
I think
Mhm.
a guy who suffered a stroke, and how could they possibly be in the
Yeah.
same thing?
Yeah. So those two particular things are not necessarily connected, but
Right, because one's
other
more muscle.
aspects. Yeah, yeah. Other aspects are. So like after a stroke, depending on where the damage is in your brain, you can have specific speech and language deficits after that. So for one is if it's in a certain area, doesn't necessarily have to be just in this area. You can have other damage, but if you do have damage to a little area called Broca's area, which is part on your motor strip in the brain, typically in your left hemisphere. Most people house their language in their left hemisphere. So if you have a left hemispheric stroke, you're more likely to have language and speech affected, versus if you have a right hemispheric stroke, you're less likely. But Broca's aphasia is basically if you have damage to the certain area in your brain, it has to do with motor planning for speech. So that means you know exactly what you're trying to say. Your brain has the vocabulary. Your receptive language is usually, if not fully intact after the stroke, very mildly impaired. And then when you go to say it, the words will not come out. So it's the most highly frustrating aphasia ever because they're fully aware of it. They've gone from totally normally functioning communicative adults who now have no words. So it's extremely frustrating.
That's like my
But
greatest fear.
right, right, exactly. It's everybody's greatest fear. And because you don't realize how much, I mean, you probably do realize, but you don't realize how much everyday functions depends on not just making requests and answering phone calls and talking to your children, but even talking through things with yourself, like hearing your own voice creates so much calmness in your brain. Like there's so much that's affected by lack of speech. But so that can be, so it's from brain damage in this certain area. Then you can have developmental apraxia of speech, which is basically the same issue. They know exactly what they're trying to say. Their muscles work fine, but something in transmitting that motor speech aspect of it, it's harder for them to get the words out. So a lot of these kids are very delayed speakers. And then when they do speak, it's really hard for them to produce the words correctly. So they're really difficult to understand. So it's not just that they're missing an R sound because their tongue's not in the right place. It's that it develops in the brain. That's a motor strip, motor planning for speech. So those are two caused by two totally different things in children in this, but the therapy can be very similar, although it doesn't look like that. I think I can find things that are similar between them because it's easy to see patterns among things when you do them for so long. So if you work out some of the things that you work on with the adult, I'll throw that in and work on it with a kid, and it'll work. Not all the time because it's not 100%, but that's what I mean by like connections between the two. Even though they're totally different people, characteristics are similar, but there's different things happening in the brain, and you can throw certain things in there and it works because it actually is the same areas in the brain that are affected.
How much? I'm glad you said that because that was going to be my next question was whether
Yes.
you've noticed something that works in an adult or a child and then you've
Mhm.
thrown it across. How much of
Yeah.
what you do is structured process versus kind of creative problem solving?
Yeah. So I think every therapist works a little bit differently. It should be a good marriage of the two, I think, depending on that case. Because some cases you could go in and do, you have your set, you get a diagnosis, and you see this person on paper. And then when they come in, all their characteristics fit this diagnosis, blah, blah, blah. But then you go in and you have your kind of standard things you kind of throw at it, if that makes sense. And none of it's working.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't this work? These are all the things that should work for this type of brain damage, this type of characteristic, but it's just not for whatever reason. That's when you really got to throw creativity in because you can't just keep knocking on this person's brain and it's not working. You got to figure out some way to meet them where they are and improve it as much as you can with the level of brain damage that there is. But most of the time, there's huge room for improvement with speech and language, especially in these younger people who are having strokes are getting much, but the numbers are actually going down in elderly patients and they're going up. They've actually gone up over the past, I think the past decade, don't quote me 100% on this, they've gone up almost 15% in 18 to 44-year-olds, which is
Wow.
crazy, right? Crazy. You don't think of people having strokes with that, so you've also got, here's the other thing too, you've also got all this years of research in speech therapy on strokes, aphasia, but they're typically on older brains. An 85-year-old brain is not going to respond the same as a 42-year-old brain, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
all these things that you learn to work with this client, you can pull a couple of it out there, but it's a totally different type. I mean, it's totally different stage in life, totally different skill set. So you have to be creative. So I would say it's like 25% structure, 75% creativity. Because
Nice.
you have to, and by creativity, I mean, you don't want to get married to a cookbook set of this is what you do for this client. If it's not working, either send them somewhere that can work with them if it's not something you can do, or figure out what to do. And that's also what makes it like fascinating because you get to use your brain. So you can tie all this stuff together. And usually you will find something that works for that person. And it's great. It's
Yeah.
like
No.
the
That sounds like
it's the best thing ever. Yeah.
yeah, it's very rewarding.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I like to do is
Yeah.
where there's I've been going on this rant a lot on this podcast lately is
Mhm.
I've keep finding myself loving to talk to thinkers because
Mhm.
people who are capable of thinking, you're not inside of a structured
Right.
box, you're not
Mhm. Right.
uh stuck in an ideology, whether it's political or this or that or the other. Like
Right,
you
right.
can have completely differing opinions on
Hmm.
things, but you can still have such intelligent and rewarding conversation. And I
Right.
think too many professions,
Hmm.
including a lot of
A lot of medical professions.
that's, yep. I'm glad you said it
Yes.
because I was hesitating to say it.
Oh no. Yeah.
Are too a
Hmm.
very personal example is my aunt was diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Hmm.
And I'm like, you gotta just start doing experimental shit, like do see if you can do
Yeah.
mushrooms because there's
Right.
some studies that mushrooms might help. Then
Right.
I
This
hear
is this.
Rick
Yeah.
Perry talking
Hmm.
about ibogaine, and I'm like,
Yeah.
figure out if you can get on ibogaine, which is
Right.
actually
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
interesting thought with the stroke people potentially. I don't know if that would, I don't know if that's really the same thing, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, the more like, so let's say Alzheimer's people were put on like a certain drug or whatever. If you saw over a lot of times, I talk about this a lot too, because I do think a lot of things fields are backwards. So I do feel, and I'm not quite sure exactly what the functional way to fix it should be. I know what it should be, but I don't know if that would actually ever work. But I feel like research is it's supposed to be like the most cutting edge and all this stuff, but it's usually way behind what's actually happening in the field because it takes so much time to study stuff, which is necessary. You need time. You need to
hmm
actually study this with statistics. But I feel like that people wait, and it's usually tied to insurance because insurance can get out of paying for anything if it's not
hmm
completely backed by research, which you could argue both ways with that. But I think it's just to not pay for stuff. But anyway, so and a lot of times there's stuff happening clinically that never becomes mainstream or takes forever to become mainstream, and you've missed 10-15 years of helping people with that because of that gap. And then 15 years later you'll start to see like, well, actually this is what happens, where like, actually this drug, it was thought that it would help Alzheimer's, but it actually helps this in the brain. So then you start to, which it's just so as a clinician or in a medical field, you're working with human beings, so you've always got to be cautious and careful with what you choose to do. But you got to push the envelope a little bit or nothing ever gets done.
I've
Like,
yeah,
with
well,
this stuff.
I've said this with Alzheimer's while you were and it popped in my head
Hmm.
again. I'm sure very very different thing, but Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. It's another
Hmm.
thing where
Hmm.
I'm like the treatment for these things are we'll give you a drug and you'll slowly die. It's not you're going to get better. It's we're going to give you
Right.
a
We're going
drug
to
and you will
decrease
slowly die.
the trajectory of it. Right.
I'm like
Yeah.
that would that's not an option for like I'm like that
Right.
you do so
Right. Yeah.
and to
Hmm.
me I'm like you hear about these drugs being tested on mice or whatever. I'm like okay,
Hmm.
so if my option is slowly die or die overnight because I do this mouse
Right.
test medication, give me the mouse
Right.
like
Right.
if
Well,
I
at
die I
least you should have
die.
the right. You should at least have the option to do that. That's my thought. Like, if you choose that you just want to get as much time as possible, and you've accepted that this is a chronic condition, it's going to deteriorate. I just want my last 5 years with my kids. More power to you.
hmm
But to be stopped from by whatever, by coverage or money, or just you're not
Laws.
allowed to do
Yeah.
these different things, right? That's unfortunate to me. I think it should be an option for anybody because it's your life, it's your body, it's your
Yeah.
time.
And I think it's it's one of those things where it's like if you're I mean, Alzheimer's particularly again, and
Mhm.
there's some personal stuff because the
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Hmm.
she's at the point now, sweetest woman in the world, and she's starting to
Hmm.
have anger snaps. Now, I have
Yeah.
not witnessed them, but her daughter has,
Yeah. Hmm.
and it's
Yeah.
like if she was of sound mind and she knew what was happening, she would rather be dead than doing this. So why
Hmm.
not let her try?
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know that
And I,
to be honest, I don't know that she has the it's an you know,
mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There are people, my mother, I've told her if something ever happens to her like this and she refuses to get as radical treatment as is possible,
Mhm.
whether it's traveling abroad or
Mhm.
whatever, I just won't speak with her anymore. Like if you're just going to accept death,
You gotta get, yeah.
or
Yeah.
and not accepting death, I'm okay with accepting death. But
Right.
Alzheimer's
Right.
in particular is you are
Yeah.
going to hurt your
It's rough.
family.
Yeah.
Like you're going to
Yeah.
forget them, you're going to lash out at them.
Yeah.
That's an
Yeah.
aggressive thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I can see with other like, you know, I can see with cancer just being like, I've lived a long life. I'm okay just dying,
Right.
that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
there are different every disease and every
Mhm.
I mean, cancer is a good example because everything's so different,
Right.
what stage it is and what are your
Right.
options and all that.
Yeah. Right. Hmm.
Even with
Alzheimer's
cancer,
is
I'm like, a lot of
tough.
times you don't want to do what the American standard is because
Right.
you see a
Hmm.
lot of people leave the
Yeah.
country, come back, and they're okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but you know, do I don't know.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
reasonable research, but just
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
make your last years and your family's memories of you tainted with the horrible stuff. Do
Right.
something.
Yeah. You know what I always want? This is a little bit of a tangent.
Hmm.
Which is not. But I always wonder, so my dad died of cancer and it was quick. And it's been 17 years. Um, but he died of cancer within like diagnosed and died within 3 months. So it was like
Oh,
you were 2 steps behind the whole time. Like just which is horrible, but it's also if you're going to die of terrible cancer, I don't know if I would want it stretched out for 5 years of treatments and all this stuff. But I don't know. Maybe I would. I don't know. But anyway, the point of my story is that so when he was diagnosed with cancer, he did the whatever scan, and they found a mass, and then they did like the full testing. And so I remember it was my whole family, well, four of us, and they basically told my dad it was terminal cancer and it spread everywhere, and there's nothing we can do. So he basically got a death sentence in that room, in
mm.
that moment, which is horrible. So of course, me as his daughter, and I was daddy's girl, I'm devastated. So I'm like, you know, and my mom's devastated, my brother, but what does my dad feel at that moment? You know what I mean? Like when you think about that, like, so then like all the treatments and all the stuff that he had to do, I always wonder, like, did he really, I don't know, like, should he have even tried any of those treatments if he knew? I don't know. It's just interesting because I think of like, what does it feel like to be that person? And I'm sure it is different with your personality and all that stuff. But I always think of that. Like, if that were me, would I desperately want to do all the different treatments?
I
Or would I just want to be like in a fog or give up? I don't know.
I had
But
a friend who had a friend who died of pancreatic cancer, and he
mhm,
refused treatment. He died
right.
like 30 days after the diagnosis,
Yeah.
and doctors told him it could be painful treatment for 6 months and you're going to die, or you'll die 30
Right, right,
days.
right. That's basically
You'll
what, right.
you'll have good and bad
Mhm,
days, but
right.
and my friend was so angry, mainly because he didn't tell people. He
Oh,
just
yeah, there's that.
um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I was like, if I were in the shoes, I don't know if I'd tell people, but I would make a point to have important conversations with important
Right.
people
Yeah.
in my life to
Right.
make sure that things go out on a good note. I wouldn't,
Mhm.
if someone said you can
Right.
have live a painful 6 months or a mediocre 30
Right.
days, I'll live the mediocre 30 days and
Right. Right. Right.
that's what I say now while I don't have a pancreatic cancer
Right.
diagnosis.
Right.
Um,
Right. I just remember, and I don't know if anyone ever even asked my dad. I know I didn't, like just, I don't know. just so I wonder with like Alzheimer's, something that's so typically so long and gradual, like how much do they really understand? I know in early stages, it's well documented that they're aware that they're
Hmm.
forgetting things and they're aware, and I've worked with patients with Alzheimer's quite a bit, but I always wonder, like, when do they become unaware? You know what I mean? Because, and where is that transition? And by the time they're unaware, they can't make those decisions anymore,
Right.
you know? So it's just such a stressful window of all of it.
No, yeah, for
Mm.
me, you know,
Yeah.
that's this is where my morbid brain goes. It's like if I got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, first of all, I would do anything I could to try to fix it.
Right.
Break the law, do whatever, pay whatever
Right.
to find someone who will give me experimental mouse drugs to see if
Right.
it'll work.
Right.
Aside from that, I would just be like, all right, well, here's my death date. I'm gonna have some parties. We're gonna have a funeral while I'm still alive, and then I'll take a bunch of pills and die that night. Like
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
we'll celebrate my life, and I will not be that person who starts forgetting my children and starts screaming at having
Right.
angry.
Mhm.
I don't know,
Yeah.
again, easy for me to say
Yeah.
as someone who doesn't have a
Right. That's what I
diagnosis.
mean. Like, because I would say, like, I would do this, this, and this, but then I just remember that moment, like, and I didn't think of that moment then when my dad was actually diagnosed. I thought of it years later. Like, what was his perception of all of it? I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It is an interesting thought, and
Yeah.
again, I love I love the way your brain works, because you are a thinker. Uh,
It served me well. No, I'm kidding. I
no,
think sometimes it'd be easier not to be a thinker, but
oh
I
yeah.
enjoy it just, you know what I
I'll
mean?
close us out on this. I classified, which I think is a genius classification of four groups of people. And you could
I'm
break these down
intrigued.
a lot more,
Yes.
but there are smart people who know they're smart, and
Hmm.
they're potentially great, potentially dangerous because,
Hmm. Hmm.
category
Yes.
I'm in is smart people who aren't 100% sure they're smart. Like they're like, I know my brain works pretty well, but I know other people know a lot more than me about a lot of things. And that's where
Right.
again where I
Hmm.
differentiate intelligence and knowledge where
Yeah. Hmm.
you can be like, I think I'm smart, but sometimes I feel stupid.
Right.
Um, that's the category I'm in.
Hmm.
And I think most thinkers are probably in that category, frankly, because
Yeah.
they acknowledge like, boy, this person
Hmm.
knows a lot more about this than me. Maybe that.
Right. And I'm totally fine with that. Like, I'm fine if they know more than me on that.
Yeah.
Like, I think, yeah,
Yeah, and
which is,
then there are dumb people who know they're dumb. Those are the happiest people on the planet.
yeah, yes,
They're the
yes.
happiest people on the planet. They don't need to care
Uh-huh.
about these big overarching
Yeah.
issues because why would
Right.
they? They know they're not
Right.
smart. They're just living day to day and having a good time. They're the happiest people.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous of them. I know I'm not one of them. And then the scariest and the plurality of these groups is the dumb people who think they're smart. And that is by far the largest percentage. Hopefully
And they
not a
measure,
majority.
I think they measure it by knowledge too, like that. Like that's because I feel like, I don't know where I fall in all that, but I feel like there's a measurement, like for example, and then I'll be quiet because I know we got to wrap up. But when I went to, you have to go to get a master's degree to be a speech pathologist. So yeah, like you have to get it. So when I was in graduate school, I was fresh out of college and I loved college, loved it. Like I just love how you just go and sit and all these people tell you all the stuff they know and you get to talk about it and think about it. I loved it. So and then like actually turning everything in, doing the work, but I loved the actual like listening to it. But then I went to graduate school and I expected the same thing. And it was, I quickly got a feeling where I was like, is this it? Like, is this all like, they really don't know anything about the brain. Like, you know what I mean? Like, which is fascinating in and of itself. But I'm like, there's actually and I don't even pretend to know a scintilla of the knowledge of the brain. But that's typically, that's what I thought when I was in graduate school. I was like, we actually don't like, this is you get to put letters behind your name. And I realize how little I know now, where I thought I knew a lot more 5 years ago. Now I realize that there's so much stuff that they actually don't have any idea what's going on. I don't know.
Well,
But then I thought too, then you think, well, do they know, or do they think they know all of it? You know,
I think a
anyway,
lot of
interesting.
teachers, professors fall into the
Hmm.
dumb people who think they're smart or who think they're
Hmm.
geniuses.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
because they're very knowledgeable. And you're definitely
Hmm.
either the smart person who knows they're smart or the smart person who thinks they're smart. Which I think, again, I think I'm smart, but I'm not 100% sure. I think that's a good
Right.
category to be in. Like,
I think too, I like to be in the I don't really care category too. Like, you know what I mean? Like you think your brain works a certain way and all that stuff, but do I really care what anybody else would think about it? I don't know. It's just interesting. Anyway,
yeah,
we went on a
it's an
tangent
interesting
again. I'm
it's
sorry.
an interesting delineation of humans. And the sad thing is
Right.
the really the smartest people are like, God, I wish I was dumb and knew I was dumb. My life would be so simple and happy. Like,
Right.
oh,
I would sleep so much better at night, I think.
I know. Well,
Right.
there's so many
Yeah.
studies I'm sure you're aware of where the smarter people are more likely to be drug addicts, alcoholics.
Yeah, because they're
Yeah, of
fighting their
course.
brain all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
I
Yeah.
described this to somebody who really does not like people who drink. But
Uh-huh.
he said, and I'm like, here's my thing. My brain is going a million directions at all
Hmm.
times. But when I
Hmm.
drink, I work when I drink. Like I'm
Hmm.
writing scripts, I'm doing whatever, and my
Yeah.
brain, it's almost like how I hear people with ADHD describe Adderall. It's like my
Hmm.
brain locks in because it
I
can't
was going
think
to say, I
about a
was like,
million things.
right.
It can only think about one thing that I'm working on. I'm like, some of my best work is when I'm not, shit faced, but when I've got a
Right.
nice buzz going, because I can't think about other things. I can only think about
Mhm.
what's right in front of me, and I get in
It,
a zone.
right. It's also, I think about that too. And I'm not like advocating to drink to get this way, but I think it makes it literal. You know what I mean? Like if because you're literally, I mean, it's a depressant, so it literally slows things down in your brain, slows things. So your brain's not going to be able to connect all the 80 thoughts that are in there at once. It can focus. And I don't mean focus like necessarily ADHD. I just mean
Right.
it can cut out everything else and hone in on one thing. Not that I'm saying you people should do this.
No,
but
no.
but I could see how, like, neurologically, because alcohol affects your brain neurologically, like it definitely changes the chemistry in your brain at that moment. So I could see how it would, yeah. So like cut out the noise, if that makes sense,
Yes, that's
Yeah,
exactly the words I use.
right.
It cuts out the noise, it takes away
Yeah.
all the noise, and lets me just lock in.
So I have
Um,
a question, and then I'll be done, I promise, because I'm taking
no,
on 80 tangents. So do you like white noise at night? Does it help you sleep or does it keep you up?
I have to have. I debate whether it's the noise. It probably is, or whether it's the airflow. I need to have the ceiling fan on, and I need to have a fan next to the bed
Mhm.
blowing on me. Um, I
Mhm.
like to say it's because I run hot and I like the cool, but I do think
Right.
I'm a very light sleeper,
Yeah,
and
that's where I was going. Yeah.
so like I'm hyper vigilant. So if there's
Hmm.
if there's a faucet dripping
Hmm.
anywhere in my house, I will hear
Right.
it and be like, "What is that
Hmm.
noise? What is that noise?"
Right. And I think it's the rhythm of it too, because this is my theory, but it matches some speech and language stuff. Like I like white noise because I don't have to process it. It's just shh. Okay, it shuts it's like what you're describing. It cuts out the noise, literally. But
Mm,
if hear a rhythmical thing, something my brain has to process, I'm a very light sleeper too, then I will wake up like 80 times a night. Not because I'm afraid or I'm trying to figure out, it's just it stimulates my brain. My brain wakes up and it's like, what's up? And it just, but so the white noise, the shh, my brain's not trying to process anything. So it lets me sleep a lot better. It's like my one sleeping hack. But I always wonder if that's for people who tend to like, spin a little bit at night or you have a hard time cutting their thoughts off.
Yeah.
But my husband is the opposite. The white noise agitates him, and he is fine with like rhythm, like the TV on, like water dripping. Nothing wakes him up. But the white noise, as soon as I cut it on, he's like, "What is that?" Like, it's interesting.
Interesting.
Anyway, I don't know. I always ask because I feel like different types of brains do that because it's the auditory signal. It just wakes my auditory nerve up to have to process something.
Yeah,
But I'm
well,
very auditory. So,
that's my kids make fun of me because I'll be like, "What's that noise? What's that noise?" They're like, "I
uh-huh.
don't hear anything." And they'll
Yeah.
say things to me and I'll be like, "What did you say? I couldn't understand. I couldn't hear you."
Yeah.
Like it could, because the other thing is if you talk to me while the TV's on, I'll hear nothing. I can't like
Yeah. Yeah.
but if a faucet's dripping while the TV's on and you're
Mhm.
talking to me, I'll hear that.
Yeah.
I won't
Yeah.
hear any words from either thing, but I'll hear the
Right.
faucet dripping.
Right. Just fascinating. Anyway, all the
Yeah.
little differences in how people think or process anything like noise or vision or thoughts, all of it is fascinating.
I had a woman who dated me describe and I've been using it.
You sound so passive in that. I think a
Yeah.
woman who dated me.
Yeah,
Sorry.
she she called it hypervigilance.
Language. Sorry. She
Yeah,
did
yeah.
that.
She called it. She's like you're hyper vigilant. Like I'll notice.
That makes sense.
I get
Hmm.
very. I'm very observational. Of like, there's someone over there. I notice things out
Hmm.
of my peripheries. I notice cars
Yeah.
really well. Like when
Hmm.
I'm walking and I'm like, oh, hold on, this car is going to turn here and they're not going to look at us.
Hmm.
Like, how did you
Hmm.
see that? I'm like, because it was coming up over there and
Right. You
I
can
could
tell by
tell
the
it
way
was
it's
making a left
driving with it.
turn and
Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah.
So she's like, hey, you like hypervigilance, and I'm like, and then I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. That's about me. Like, I'll notice
See,
these.
that's interesting. I wouldn't think it was hypervigil. I would say it's more like pattern recognition. But you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah. No, I would sign off on that. It's
yeah. So
it's
it's almost like, okay, this car's doing this. I bet this is gonna like,
well, her
like you
thing
can't cut that
was
far
like,
off.
you were looking there. How did you see that car come from behind you?
Oh,
And I'm
I
like, well,
got you.
I heard the
Yeah.
noise and I saw
Yeah.
headlights and I turned my
That's what I mean.
eyes and
Pattern. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, it could be. Yeah,
Eh,
that's maybe a better
yeah.
way of doing it. Is just I'm able to quickly pick up on sounds
Yeah.
and sights
Yeah.
that make me like, oh, my spidey
Yeah.
sense is tingling.
Right.
Basically, I'm
Yeah.
fat old Spider-Man. Uh, Ashlyn, this has been a tremendous conversation.
Yes. I got a
Um,
little off topic. I apologize.
no.
But
I love
yeah.
it. I love it. We could go off on tangents for hours, but I won't make you do that, especially since it's a late night podcast.
It is past my bedtime.
Yes. So Ashlyn, where can people find you, follow you on social media and all of those things?
Yes. So the easiest place is just our website. It's just speechmattersclinic.com. And that has, the contact button goes directly to me and then I triage it out everywhere. So, and I promise I do actually read every single one. So if you have any questions or anything like that, we can have a little conversation over email before, regardless of whether or not it turns into like a speech appointment, if that makes sense. Um, and I can help kind of triage, if speech or OT is where you need to be, or if you need to go somewhere else first. So Speech Matters Clinic. And then we also do Instagram, which I post maybe like twice a week because I'm Gen X. So it takes me a while to get on there. But it's speech.matters.clinic. And then of course we're on LinkedIn. And that's pretty much our social media. We do those. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I will link
Thanks.
all of them in the show notes below.
Yeah.
Ashlyn, thanks again. This has been a lot of fun, and it's one of those podcasts where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this one because I think it could be interesting as long as
Yes.
she is interesting. And yeah, you're outstanding. Maybe
Oh,
we'll
good.
do this
Thank
again
you. Thank you
sometime.
very much. Yeah, I'm available. I love to talk. So partly why I became a speech therapist.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. It's been fun on my end too. It's been very, very interesting conversation. I like it. No lulls, which is always wonderful.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Ashlyn.
Excellent.
That's it. That's all. Hope you had a ball. Thank you, Ashlyn, for joining me. Fun, uh, interesting conversation. Uh, very glad she was a very thoughtful person because that's where my head's at now, man. I like people who think. So thanks, Ashlyn, for coming on. Um, she was just full disclosure, the next three of the next four episodes I release. I was fine when I talked to Ashlyn, I think. But yeah, I recorded two the next day, struggling with some congestion, and then Friday literally started a couple hours before I'm recording this. I think I sound better now, but I've also had a couple drinks, so that helps. Daddy's medicine helps. I was not sick. It was just nasal congestion and some, throat coughing, clearing kind of thing. Anywho, boom, it's over. Thanks for listening.
It was amazing. I loved it.
Be sure to come back for another great episode
I'm one wing away from Jeff Macolino.
of the Jeff Macolino Podcast.
How much time did you spend on thinking of the name of your podcast? You went just straight, that's my name, I'll add the word podcast to it.
Yup. See you next week.